I had the high privilege of meeting Neil Kramer a few years ago in the Listen to Your Mother show in New York City. I instantly connected with his depth and his wit. A writer for Disney and HBO, Neil is a master at satire and irony. Today, he entertains us with Breaking Up with My Therapist. Sorry, therapist. I just have to get your page, Neil. There.
Thank you. Hello. I started seeing David, my first therapist, in 2015. Here are some terms that I learned from him about myself: codependence, avoidance, rumination, anxiety, and that was only in the first session. Other people, when looking for the perfect therapist, they travel around town comparing the therapist's fancy college degrees, the softness of the couches, the magazines in the waiting room. David was a middle-aged man with horn-rimmed glasses, unkempt hair, and a Bernie Sanders sticker on his filing cabinet. His office had crappy magazines, but it didn't matter. He was the ideal therapist for me because David looked like another version of me. Every Thursday afternoon for 2 years, I went to his office, and we talked and talked and talked, and he wrote notes that I never saw. What was he writing anyway? He never told me. You see, David was a traditional talk therapist. The process was to get me to understand myself through apparently a lot of talking. There was just one big problem. I came to therapy not just to talk, but to be fixed. And I was still having the same problems in relationships and work. Be patient. Therapy takes time, he would say. But was I going to be going to therapy for the rest of my life? I imagined myself a 90-year-old in an assisted living facility, eating my lunch, when suddenly I cry out, "I finally get it, my issues are fixed." And then I drop dead in a bowl of Jell-O. Here lies Neil, finally fixed at age 90, a mess for the other 89. One afternoon, I was in the bookstore when I stumbled on a book on cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT. CBT, in case people don't know what it is, which is unlike traditional therapy, is a type of psychology that focuses less on analyzing the past, relationship to your parents, than on the present now and the patient reframing the way he thinks. For instance, the old you would say, "I can't apply for that job, I'm not good enough, I'm a loser." But the new you would say, "Hell, I'm a nice person, people like me. I'm going to ask them for a higher salary, those cheapskates." I needed CBT. I told David about my sudden interest in CBT. So for the next 2 weeks, we introduced some CBT into our sessions. But it just didn't feel natural. We already had a working relationship, a talk therapy one. And as you all know, changing the smallest thing in any established relationship is near impossible. That's when I went online to do a little research. It was the next chapter in one of the oldest stories known to man, the guy who thinks about leaving his therapist. I eventually discovered a clinic that offered a 5-month weekly CBT program on a sliding scale, but it required 2 intake sessions beforehand to see if we were a good fit. Up until now, I have not mentioned any of this to David, but that Thursday I decided to broach the subject, and it was as awkward as discussing a trial separation with your wife. When I saw his disappointment, I reminded him that he was the one who taught me to be proactive and go out of my comfort zone. Looking for a CBT therapist was a testament to his work. But he wasn't buying it. He had a better idea. I could see 2 therapists each week. I would work on my emotional life with him and the CBT with the other. David even opened up about his own personal life. He told me that he went to 2 therapists himself and that I could do the same. Well, while I appreciate him opening up to me, the last thing I wanted to do was to be running back and forth to different therapists all week. But I went back to avoiding the issue. Well, I'm not even sure I'm getting in yet, so let's just wait and see. But I did get in. And my new therapist, Roger, was super professional. Are you seeing any other therapist, Roger asked. Well, I'm sort of still with my old therapist. Well, since our program involves research on the effectiveness of CBT, we ask that our participants only see us alone for therapy. Oh, okay, I'll tell him on Thursday. On Thursday, I arrived with a shopping bag, inside with 2 gifts, a book on Freud and a box of cookies. David looked at me. So you got in the program. This is our last session, he said. I nodded. That's fine, he said. Let's just do a recap of everything we've learned together. He started reading to me from his notes. First time he ever did that. But I could see that he was clearly upset. And I'm thinking, why? I was actually paying a pretty low rate. Clearly he can get another client who can pay more, which would be good. But money was not the issue. But then I realized there was a reason that I immediately bonded with David. There was a reason that he was so empathetic about issues of abandonment. There was also a reason David was seeing 2 therapists. David had the exact same problems that I did. Sure, he was a professional, a person of authority, but he was also someone who suffered the slings and arrows of life just like everyone else. He was a person. At the end of the session, David shook my hand. So since the CBT thing is just a 5-month program, will you be coming back for therapy after it's over? Yes, I said. He nodded and understood that I probably wasn't, because being like me, he would have answered the exact same way. Thank you.